Admiral Zextel stared at the holographic display showing the battlefield. Red dots marked enemy ships. Blue dots marked his own forces. There were too many red dots and not enough blue ones. The Krethver Empire was winning, and they were winning. Badly. "Sir, we've lost another cruiser," reported Commander Veltar, his voice tight with worry. "The Star Walker is gone. All hands lost." Zextel closed his 4 eyes for a moment. The Star Walker had been one of their best ships. Captain Mordain had been a good friend. Now both were space dust floating in the void. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked. 47 combat vessels, sir. The Krethver still have over 200. The numbers were getting worse every day. 6 months ago, the Krethver Empire had declared war on the Galactic Coalition. They said the coalition was weak and needed to be ruled by a stronger hand. They said they would bring order to the galaxy, not what they brought was death. The Krethver had new weapons. Their ships were faster and stronger than anything the coalition had ever seen. They could destroy a planet's defenses in hours. They took prisoners and made them slaves. They stripped worlds of all their resources and left them as dead rocks in space. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Eternal Vigilance," said Communications Officer Nexal. "Admiral Corthell wants all fleet commanders to report to the flagship immediately." Zextel nodded. He knew what this meeting would be about. They were losing the war. Soon, they would have to make hard choices. Very hard choices. The shuttle ride to the flagship took 20 minutes. Zextel used the time to think about his home world. His family lived there. His children played in the crystal gardens where he had played as a young one. If the coalition lost this war, the Krethver would destroy all of that. The meeting room on the Eternal Vigilance was filled with the best military minds in the coalition. Admiral Corthell, a tall being with silver skin and 6 arms, stood at the head of the table. His face looked tired. They all looked tired. "My friends," Corthell began, "we are facing the end of everything we have built. The Krethver have taken 47 worlds in 6 months. Their fleet grows stronger while ours grows weaker. We have lost over 300 ships and millions of lives." General Texmore, the coalition's top ground forces commander, spoke up. "My soldiers are brave, but they cannot fight enemies with such advanced weapons. The Krethver have armor that our guns cannot pierce. They have weapons that can level cities in minutes." "What about our allies?" asked Admiral Jordan. "Surely someone can help us." Corthell shook his head. "The neutral worlds will not risk war with the Krethver. The merchant guilds care only for profit. The religious orders say this is not their fight. We stand alone." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the truth. The coalition was dying. "Commander." Veltar cleared his throat. "Sir, there might be one option we haven't considered." "Speak," said Corthell. "The humans." The silence in the room became deeper. Several commanders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The humans had joined the coalition 3 years ago, but they remained mysterious. They came from a small blue world called Earth, far from the main trade routes. They had been friendly enough, but they kept to themselves. "The humans have only been with us for 3 years," said Admiral Jordan. "They have no real military power. We've used them for escort duties and minor patrols. They have never fought in a real war." "That's just it," said Veltar. "We don't really know what they can do. They've never shown us their full capabilities. Every time we've asked about their military, they've been vague." Admiral Zextel remembered his few meetings with human officers. They had been polite but distant. They asked many questions about coalition military tactics and strategy. They seemed particularly interested in how other species conducted warfare. It had seemed like curiosity at the time. "I've heard stories," said General Texmore quietly. "Stories from the border worlds. trade captains who've dealt with human merchants. They say humans think differently about conflict. They say humans don't believe in fair fights. What do you mean? Asked Corthel. They say that when humans fight, they fight to win. Not to prove honor or to show strength, just to win. By any means necessary. The room was quiet again. Most coalition species had rules about warfare. There were things you didn't do, even. To enemies, there were limits. Honor mattered. Showing mercy to defeated foes was important. War was terrible, but it should be conducted with some dignity. There's something else, said Commander Veltar. Intelligence reports suggest the humans have been building ships. Lots of ships. Big ones. But they won't tell us what they're for. Admiral. Corthel stood up slowly. Are you suggesting we ask the humans to join this fight with their full military power? I'm suggesting we don't have any other choice, Veltar replied. We can die with honor fighting alone, or we can ask for help. And maybe live. The debate that followed was heated. Some argued that bringing humans into the war would change everything. Others said they had no choice. The coalition was losing. Soon there would be nothing left to save. Finally, Admiral Corthel called for a vote. The decision was close, but the majority agreed. They would send a message to Earth. They would ask the humans to join the fight. As the meeting ended, Zexthal overheard two junior officers talking in the corridor. Do you think the humans will help us? Asked one. I hope so, replied the other. But I'm more worried about what happens if they do. Zexthal understood that fear. The humans were unknown. They might save the coalition, or they might make everything worse. But with the Krethfer Empire closing in, they had no choice but to find out. The message to Earth was sent that night. It was simple and direct. The coalition needs help. We are losing. Will you fight with us? The answer came back 3 days later. It was even simpler. Yes, we're coming. Nobody in the coalition was prepared for what that meant. Admiral Jack Morrison sat in his office at the Naval Command Center in Colorado. The message from the Galactic Coalition lay on his desk. He had read it 5 times already, but the words still seemed unreal. The coalition was losing a war. They needed help. They were asking Earth to send military support. Jack picked up his phone and dialed the president's direct line. Ma'am, we need an emergency meeting. The coalition has made a request that changes everything. 2 hours later, Jack stood in the White House Situation Room. President Lisa Carter sat at the head of the table. Defense Secretary Paul Rodriguez was on her right. Director of Intelligence Maria Santos was on her left. Around the table sat the most important people in Earth's government. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said President Carter. The coalition is facing extinction. They're asking us to send our military to help them fight. That's correct, ma'am, said Jack. They're desperate. From what I can tell, this Krethfer Empire has technology that's superior to anything the coalition has. Paul Rodriguez leaned forward. How superior? What are we talking about? Their ships are faster, their weapons are stronger, and their armor is better. They've conquered 47 worlds in 6 months. The coalition is losing badly. Director. Santos opened a file. Our intelligence suggests the situation is even worse than they're telling us. The Krethfer don't just conquer worlds. They strip them bare and enslave the populations. This isn't just a war. It's genocide. The room fell silent. President Carter rubbed her temples. What do we know about the Krethfer Empire? They're a militaristic society, said Santos. They believe in conquest and domination. They see other species as inferior. They've been expanding for decades, but this is their biggest offensive yet. Jack cleared his throat. Ma'am, there's something else. The coalition doesn't know what our military can really do. We've kept our capabilities hidden from them. Why? Asked the president. Because we weren't sure we could trust them. And because we weren't sure they could handle the truth about how we fight wars. Paul Rodriguez nodded. Our military doctrine is very different from theirs. They fight with honor and rules. We fight to win. President Carter looked around the table. How different are we talking about? Jack stood up and walked to the wall. Screen. May I show you something, ma'am? The president nodded. Jack activated the screen, showing a star map of human space. Dozens of red dots appeared, each one marking a military installation. The coalition thinks we have maybe 50 ships. For defense, Jack said. The truth is, we have over 800 combat vessels. We've been building them in secret for the past 5 years. 800? Said Rodriguez. Why so many? Because we learned something when we joined the coalition, Jack replied. We learned that the galaxy is a dangerous place. We learned that there are species out there that see humans as weak and primitive. We decided that if someone ever came for Earth, we would be ready. Director Santos added, our analysis showed that most galactic species fight wars the same way they did thousands of years ago. They have honor codes and rules. They try to minimize casualties. They fight to prove points, not to destroy enemies. And humans? Asked the president. Humans fight to win, said Jack. We use every advantage we can find. We adapt quickly. We don't stop until the enemy can't fight anymore. Paul Rodriguez activated another screen. We've also developed technologies that other species haven't. Our ships are faster because we use AI systems that other species consider too dangerous. Our weapons are more accurate because we let computers make targeting decisions without human input. What about our crews? Asked President Carter. Our training is different too, said Jack. Coalition officers are taught to command with honor and dignity. Our officers are taught to win at any cost. They're taught to think like the enemy and use that knowledge to destroy them. Captain Danny Walsh, who had been quiet until now, spoke. Up, ma'am, I've served with coalition forces. They're good people and brave fighters. But they don't understand what total war means. They think war should be fair. They think there should be rules. And we don't? Asked the president. We think war is a problem to be solved, said Danny. The fastest way to solve it is to make the enemy stop fighting. We don't care if that's fair or honorable. We care if it works. President Carter leaned back in her chair. What would it mean if we send our full military to help the coalition? Jack looked at his notes. It would mean revealing technologies that will change how the galaxy sees us. It would mean showing them that humans are not the peaceful species they think we are. It would mean that after this war, everyone will be afraid of us. And if we don't help, the coalition falls. The Krethfer Empire continues expanding. Eventually, they reach human space. And we fight them alone. Paul Rodriguez added, our analysis shows that the Krethfer technology is advanced, but it's not better than ours. They've been winning because they're fighting enemies who don't know how to adapt. We know how to adapt. Director Santos opened another file. There's something else, ma'am. Our intelligence suggests that the Krethfer have been watching us. They know we're part of the coalition. If the coalition falls, they'll be on their target list. Captain Walsh stood up. Ma'am, I request permission to speak freely. Go ahead. Captain, the coalition saved us from isolation. When they welcomed us, they gave us a place in the galaxy. Now they need our help. We can't let them die because we're afraid of what people might think of us afterward. The room was quiet for a long moment. President Carter looked at each person around the table. Finally, she spoke. Admiral Morrison, how long would it take to prepare a battle fleet? We have 12 dreadnoughts ready for immediate deployment. They're the most advanced ships we've ever built. Each one has firepower equal to a coalition battle group. 12. Ships against the entire Krethfer Empire? Jack smiled grimly. Ma'am, you haven't seen what these ships can do. The Krethfer have advanced technology, but they fight like everyone else in the galaxy. They line up their ships and shoot at each other until one side wins. And we don't. We fight like humans. We use speed, stealth, and superior tactics. We hit them where they don't expect it. We don't give them time to adapt. President Carter stood up. Dr. Amy Foster, you've been quiet. What do you think? Dr. Foster, the chief weapons developer, looked up from her tablet. Ma'am, our weapons systems are designed to end fights quickly. They're not designed to be fair or honorable. They're designed to make the enemy stop fighting as fast as possible. Will they work against Krethfa technology? Yes, ma'am. But once we use them, the galaxy will know what human weapons can do. There's no going back. President Carter walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Millions of people living their lives, unaware that their government was about to make a decision that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. How many coalition worlds has the Krethfer Empire conquered? She asked. 47, ma'am, said Director Santos, with billions of people enslaved or killed. And they're not going to stop. No, ma'am. They won't stop until they control the entire galaxy. President Carter turned back to the table. Admiral Morrison, prepare the fleet. We're going to help the coalition. And we're going to show the Krethfer Empire why you should never threaten human friends. Jack nodded. Yes, ma'am. How much force are we authorized to use? Whatever it takes to win, Admiral. Whatever it takes. As the meeting ended, Jack couldn't help but think about what they were about to unleash. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not the peaceful species they appeared to be. The question was whether the galaxy would thank them for it or fear them forever. The Kepler 442 system was dying. Coalition forces had been holding the line for 3 weeks, but they were losing ground every day. The Krethfer had brought 3 full battle groups to crush the coalition garrison. Over 100 enemy ships surrounded the small force of coalition defenders. Admiral Zexthal watched the battle from the bridge of his flagship. His forces were down to 23 ships. The Krethfer still had over 90. It was only a matter of time before they were all destroyed. Sir, we're getting reports from the outer sensor net, said Commander Veltar. 12 ships approaching from the edge of the system. Zexthal felt his heart sink. More Krethfar ships. This was the end. Wait, said Veltar, checking his readings. Again. Sir, these aren't Krethfar ships. The signatures are ... different. Coalition reinforcements? Asked Zexthal hopefully. No, sir. These are completely unknown designs. They're not in any of our databases. The communications officer looked up from his station. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet. It's in Coalition Standard. Put it through. Ordered ZEX single quotes Thul. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and steady. Coalition forces, this is Admiral Jack Morrison of the Human Defense Fleet. We are here to help. Zexthal stared at the display. Humans? The peaceful species that ran escort missions and diplomatic errands? What could they possibly do against the Krethfer Empire? Human ships, he replied. This is Admiral Zexthal of the Coalition 4th Fleet. We appreciate your offer, but you should leave immediately. The Krethfar have overwhelming force. Your ships will be destroyed. We'll take that risk, Admiral, came the reply. All Coalition ships pull back to a safe distance. We'll handle this. Zexthal watched in amazement as the 12 human ships moved into formation. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. The ships were sleek and black, with no visible weapons or armor. They moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for vessels of their size. The Krethver commanders had noticed the newcomers too. War leader Kex Valoom, commanding the Krethver forces, opened a channel to the human fleet. "Unknown vessels," his voice boomed across the system. "You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. The Krethver Empire does not show mercy to those who interfere with our conquest." The human response was immediate and shocking. "Krethver forces, you have one opportunity to withdraw from Coalition space. This is your only warning." Kex Valoom laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the communication. "System, 12 ships against 3 battle groups? You are either very brave or very stupid." "We're neither," replied Admiral Morrison. "We're human." What happened next changed everything Zexthal thought he knew about warfare. The human ships didn't charge forward like Coalition forces would have. They didn't form a battle line like the Krethver expected. Instead, they scattered in all directions, moving faster than any ship Zexthal had ever seen. The lead human ship, identified as the UES Retribution, fired first. But it wasn't like any weapon Zexthal had ever witnessed. There was no beam of energy, no missile trail. One moment a Krethver heavy cruiser was there. The next moment it was gone. Not destroyed, not broken apart, but completely gone. Nothing remained, not even debris. "What was that?" whispered Commander Veltar. Before anyone could answer, more human ships opened fire. Each shot completely eliminated a Krethver vessel. The enemy ships simply vanished, leaving empty space where they had been. The Krethver fleet tried to respond, but the human ships were too fast. They moved in patterns that seemed random, but were clearly coordinated. Every time the Krethver tried to target one, it was already somewhere else. Captain Tony Miller's ship, the UES Fury, demonstrated something even more terrifying. It didn't just destroy enemy vessels. It seemed to anticipate where they would be and fire before they got there. Krethver ships died before they could even change course. "How are they doing that?" asked Veltar. "I don't know," said Zexthal. "It's like they can see the future." The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 1 hour and 47 minutes. When it was over, 3 complete Krethver battle groups had been eliminated. 94 enemy ships had been destroyed. The human fleet had not taken a single hit. War leader Kex Valoom, in his flagship, was the only Krethver commander left alive. His voice shook as he transmitted his surrender. "We surrender," he said. "Please, we surrender." Admiral Morrison's response was cold and final. "You were warned. Tell your empire what happened here. Tell them that humans don't give second chances." The human ship closest to the Krethver flagship, commanded by Captain Karan White, fired once. The enemy command ship disappeared like all the others. Zexthal sat in stunned silence. In less than 2 hours, 12 human ships had accomplished what the entire Coalition fleet couldn't do in 3 weeks. They had completely destroyed a force 5 times their size without taking any damage. "Sir," said the communications officer, "the human admiral is requesting permission to come aboard." "Granted," said Zexthal. He needed to understand what he had just witnessed. Admiral Morrison arrived an hour later. He was a tall human with gray hair and calm eyes. He looked like any other Coalition officer, but Zexthal now knew that appearances were deceiving. "Admiral," said Morrison, shaking Zexthal's hand in the human custom. "I'm glad we could help." "How?" asked Zexthal. "How did you do that?" Morrison smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "We fight differently than you do. Admiral, you fight to prove your honor and protect your people. We fight to win. But those weapons, that speed—" "Technology helps," said Morrison. "But it's not just about having better guns. It's about how you use them. The Krethver expected us to fight like you do. They expected us to line up our ships and trade shots until one side won. We don't do that. Then how do you fight? Morrison walked to the display, showing the battle aftermath. We study our enemies. We learn their weaknesses. We use those weaknesses to destroy them as quickly as possible. We don't care about honor or fair play. We care about protecting our friends and eliminating threats. Commander Veltar spoke up. Your ships moved like they knew where the enemy would be before they got there. They did, said Morrison. Our computers analyze enemy movement patterns and predict their actions. Our weapons fire at where the enemy will be, not where they are. And those weapons that made the ships disappear? Morrison's expression became serious. Quantum disruptors. They break apart the atomic bonds in matter. Very efficient, very final. Zexthal felt a chill run through his body. You completely destroyed them. Yes, when humans fight a war, we fight to end it. The fastest way to end a war is to make the enemy stop fighting. The fastest way to make them stop fighting is to destroy their ability to fight. What about prisoners? Survivors? War leader Kex Valoom chose to continue fighting after we offered him the chance to surrender. He made his choice. The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Zexthal asked the question that was bothering him most. Admiral Morrison, why didn't you tell us what your military could do? Morrison looked at him directly. Because we weren't sure you could handle the truth. Your species fight wars with honor and rules. You try to minimize casualties and show mercy to enemies. Those are admirable qualities. But not effective ones? Not against enemies who don't share those values. The Krethver don't care about honor. They enslave entire populations and strip mine worlds. You can't fight that kind of enemy with rules and restraint. As Admiral Morrison prepared to leave, Zexthal asked one final question. What happens now? Now we hunt down the rest of the Krethver fleet, said Morrison. We're going to end this war, Admiral. We're going to end it quickly and completely. After the human left, Zexthal sat alone in his command center. The coalition had been saved, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they had unleashed something they didn't understand. The humans had seemed so peaceful, so reasonable. Now he knew the truth. Humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and they were on the coalition's side for now. Emperor Thakmer had ruled the Krethver Empire for 30 years. In that time, he had conquered 100 worlds and defeated dozens of enemies. He had never known defeat. He had never known fear. That changed when the reports from Kepler 442 reached his throne room. Repeat that report, he commanded, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. War Commander Dexter, one of his most trusted officers, stood before the throne. His armor was scorched and his face was pale. My lord, 3 battle groups were completely destroyed. 94 ships lost. Only 1 survivor. Survivors tell us who did this, growled Thakmer. Who dares to challenge the Empire? Humans. My lord, 12 human ships destroyed 3 battle groups in under 2 hours. The Emperor's 6 eyes narrowed. Humans? The weak species that joined the coalition? The ones who run escort missions? Yes, my lord, but they're not weak. Their technology is beyond anything we've seen. Their weapons completely destroyed our ships. No debris, no survivors. They just vanished. Thakmer stood up from his throne. He was massive, even for a Krethver. His armor was covered in the symbols of his victories. Impossible. No species can destroy our fleet so easily. I saw the recordings, my lord. The humans fight differently than anyone else. They don't follow the rules of war. They don't care about honor or fairness. They only care about winning. The Emperor paced back and forth, his heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber. How many human ships are there? Intelligence suggests they have only 12 combat vessels deployed, my lord. But double quotes Dexter hesitated. But what? We don't know what other ships they might have. We don't know their full capabilities. We've been wrong about them from the beginning. Thekmer turned to face his war council. Gather the greatest fleet in the history of the Empire. One want 300 ships. I want our best commanders. I want the World Render. The War Council looked shocked. The World Render was the Empire's most powerful ship. It was a super dreadnought that could destroy entire fleets by itself. It had never been defeated in battle. My lord, said General Kexmar, surely 12 ships don't require such overwhelming force? These aren't just 12 ships, snarled Thekmer. These are 12 ships that destroyed 3 battle groups without taking damage. I will not underestimate them again. 3 weeks later, the largest fleet in Krethfor history assembled at the Tau Ceti system. 300 ships, including the mighty World Render, waited for the humans to arrive. Emperor Thekmer had come personally to witness the destruction of this new threat. The humans came as promised. 12 black ships emerged from hyperspace and moved into formation. They looked tiny compared to the massive Krethfor fleet surrounding them. This is Emperor Thekmer of the Krethfor Empire. His voice boomed across the system. You have interfered with Imperial expansion for the last time. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. The human response came from Admiral Morrison aboard the UES Retribution. Emperor, you were warned to withdraw from Coalition space. You chose to escalate this conflict. The consequences are on you. Consequences? Laughed Thekmer. You face 300 ships with only 12. You will be destroyed. We'll see. What happened next would become known as the Tau Ceti Massacre. Though no one could agree on who was massacred, the human ships didn't attack immediately. Instead, they began broadcasting on all frequencies. The transmissions showed recordings of previous battles. Coalition forces watched in horror as Krethfor ships systematically destroyed planets and enslaved populations. But mixed in with those recordings were new images. Images of Krethfor fleets being completely destroyed by human weapons. What are they doing? Asked General Kexmar. Psychological warfare, replied Thekmer. They're trying to frighten us. But the Emperor could see that it was working. His crews were watching their own ships being destroyed over and over again. They were seeing the fate that awaited them, and the real attack began. The human ships moved faster than anything in the Krethfor fleet. They split up and attacked from multiple directions at once. But this time, something was different. Ships seemed to be acting independently, making decisions without waiting for orders. Captain Nancy Brown's ship, the U's Defiance, demonstrated what human officers called berserker protocols. The ship's artificial intelligence took control of all weapons and began engaging multiple targets simultaneously. It fired at 12 different Krethfor vessels at once, destroying them all within seconds. How is that possible? Demanded Thekmer. Their ships are thinking for themselves, whispered Dexter. They're not just following orders. They're adapting to our tactics in real time. The battle became a nightmare for the Krethfor. Every time they tried a new formation, the human ships adjusted immediately. Every time they concentrated their fire, the humans were already somewhere else. It was like fighting an enemy that could read their minds. Captain Steve Johnson's ship, the UES Thunder, used what humans called drone warfare. Thousands of small, intelligent machines poured out of the ship. Each drone was no bigger than a fighter, but they moved in perfect coordination. They swarmed Krethfor ships like insects, finding weak points and exploiting them. They're everywhere, screamed one of the Krethfor commanders. I can't target them all. The drones didn't just attack randomly. They targeted specific systems. On each ship, they disabled weapons destroyed engines, and cut communication lines. Within minutes, dozens of Krethver vessels were helpless. Then the human ships moved in for the kill. Emperor Thicmer watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically destroyed. The humans didn't just shoot at his ships. They studied them, found their weaknesses, and exploited them perfectly. Every shot was precisely placed for maximum damage. "My lord," said General Kexmar, "we must retreat. We're losing too many ships." "No," roared Thicmer. "Send in the world render. End this." The super dreadnought moved into position. It was the size of a small moon, with weapons that could destroy planets. Surely nothing could stand against it. Admiral Morrison's voice came across the communication system. "Emperor, last chance. Surrender now, and your surviving ships can leave." "Never," screamed Thicmer. "Destroy them all." The world render fired its main weapon. The beam was so powerful it lit up the entire system. But when the light faded, the human ships were still there, protected by some kind of energy shield. "Impossible," whispered THAK single quotes more. Then Admiral Morrison did something that no one expected. The UE's retribution accelerated directly toward the world render. It was going to ram the super dreadnought at near light speed. "He's insane," said Dexter. "That will destroy his ship too." "No," said Thicmer, understanding at last. "He's human." The collision was spectacular. The retribution struck the world render with the force of a nuclear explosion. But instead of being destroyed, the human ship punched right through the super dreadnought's armor. The world render exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from across the system. When the explosion faded, the retribution was still there, damaged but intact. Admiral Morrison's voice came across the communication system one last time. "We told you to withdraw." Emperor Thicmer looked around at what remained of his fleet. Less than 50 ships survived out of 300. His greatest weapon was destroyed. His most powerful commanders were dead. "My lord," said General Kexmar, "we must retreat. We cannot win this fight." For the first time in his life, Emperor Thicmer gave the order to retreat. The surviving Krethver ships fled the system, leaving behind the wreckage of the mightiest fleet in their history. As the human ships regrouped, Admiral Morrison sent a message to the fleeing Krethver forces. "This war is over. Tell your people that humans don't make threats. We make promises, and we keep them." The news of the defeat spread through the Empire like wildfire. Within days, rebellions broke out on a dozen worlds. Vassal states declared independence. The Krethver military command structure began to collapse. Emperor Thicmer sat alone in his throne room, staring at the reports. His empire was falling apart. His military was in retreat. His enemies were growing bolder. And somewhere in the galaxy, 12 human ships were hunting down the remains of his fleet. For the first time in his life, the Emperor of the Krethver Empire was afraid. The war that had threatened to destroy the Galactic Coalition ended not with a peace treaty, but with the complete collapse of the Krethver Empire. It took only 6 weeks after the Battle of Tau Ceti for the mighty empire to fall apart completely. Admiral Zexthel stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the surrender ceremony taking place in the Krethver home system. Captain Bobby Clark of the UE's Peacekeeper was accepting the formal surrender from what remained of the Imperial government. "I still can't believe it's over," said Commander Veltar. 6 months ago, we were facing extinction. Now the Krethver Empire no longer exists. Zexthel nodded, but his feelings were mixed. The coalition had been saved, but the price of that salvation was becoming clear. The galaxy would never be the same. The reports had been coming in for weeks. Krethver vassal states were declaring independence. Rebel groups were overthrowing imperial governors. Entire star systems were breaking away from what remained of the empire. The humans had not just defeated the Krethvir military. They had destroyed the Empire's will to fight. "Sir," said the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Coalition Council. They want all fleet commanders to report to the capital for an emergency session." Zexthil sighed. He knew what this meeting would be about. The Coalition leadership was scared. They had asked for help and received it, but now they were beginning to understand what they had unleashed. The emergency session took place on the Coalition capital world of Nexus Prime. The great council chamber was filled with representatives from every member species. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone was afraid to speak first. Finally, Admiral Korthel stood up. "We are here to discuss the implications of the recent war and the role of human military forces in our future." The room buzzed with nervous conversation. Everyone had seen the reports. Everyone knew what human weapons could do. "The humans saved us," said General Texmore. "Without their intervention, we would all be slaves or dead." "But at what cost?" asked Admiral Yordin. "They didn't just defeat the Krethvir. They destroyed them completely. No prisoners, no mercy, no quarter given. The Krethvir were genocidal." "Monsters," replied Senator Kexdal. "They deserved no mercy." "That's not the point," said Yordin. "The point is that humans fight wars in a way that terrifies everyone else in the galaxy. They don't follow the rules of civilized warfare." "Commander," Veltar spoke up. "With respect, Admiral, the rules of civilized warfare weren't working against the Krethvir. They were losing us the war." The debate continued for hours. Some argued that human military doctrine was necessary in a dangerous galaxy. Others worried that humanity had revealed itself to be the most dangerous species in known space. "What happens the next time we disagree with the humans?" asked Admiral Yordin. "What happens if they decide the Coalition is their enemy?" "Then we would be destroyed," said Zexthol quietly. "Just like the Krethvir." The room fell silent. Everyone knew it was true. The humans had demonstrated that they could destroy any military force in the galaxy. The question was whether they could be trusted with that power. Meanwhile, on Earth, a different kind of meeting was taking place. President Lisa Carter sat in the Oval Office with her top advisors. The reports from the Coalition were troubling. "They're afraid of us," said Admiral Morrison. "Half the Coalition worlds have requested that we remove our military bases from their territory. Can you blame them?" Asked Defense Secretary Rodriguez. "We showed them what human warfare looks like. They're terrified." President Carter looked at the intelligence reports. "What about the former Krethvir territories?" "That's the interesting part," said Director Santos. "The worlds that were enslaved by the Krethvir are asking for human protection. They want use to help them rebuild. And the Coalition, they're split. Some members want us to take a more active role in galactic security. Others want us to go back to Earth and never come out again." Captain Danny Walsh, recently promoted to Admiral, entered the room. "Ma'am, we've got a situation developing in the Vega system. The local government is requesting assistance with Krethvir holdouts." "What kind of assistance?" asked the President. "They want us to remove Imperial forces that are still occupying 3 planets. The Coalition forces in the area say it's too dangerous for them to handle." President Carter rubbed her temples. "So they're afraid of us, but they still want us to fight." "Their battles?" "That's about the size of it, ma'am." The President stood up and walked to the window. "Admiral Morrison, what's your assessment of the situation?" "Ma'am, we've changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Before the war, humans were seen as a minor species. Now everyone knows we're the most powerful military force in known space. Some species will try to be our friends. Others will try to be our enemies. Most will just try to stay out of our way. And the Coalition? They need us, but they don't trust us. They're grateful for what we did, but they're terrified of what we might do next. 3 months later, the new reality of galactic politics became clear. The coalition had split into 3 factions. The first faction, led by Admiral Zexthul, wanted to work closely with humanity. They argued that humans were the best hope for maintaining peace in the galaxy. The second faction, led by Admiral Jordan, wanted to limit human involvement in coalition affairs. They were afraid that humanity would dominate the coalition through military force. The third faction wanted to expel humanity from the coalition entirely. They argued that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with such power. The debate came to a head during a council session on Nexus Prime. Admiral Morrison had been invited to address the coalition leadership. "Members of the coalition," he began, "I understand your concerns about human military capabilities. What you saw during the war was not typical human behavior. It was human beings fighting for the survival of their friends and allies." "But it was human behavior," interrupted Admiral Jordan. "It showed us what humans are capable of when they choose to fight." "Yes, it did," Morrison agreed. "And I won't apologize for being effective at protecting our allies. The question is not whether humans can fight wars. The question is whether you trust us to use that ability responsibly." Senator Kextall stood up. "Admiral, can you promise use that humans will never use their military power against coalition members?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "Senator, I can promise you that humans will never attack coalition members who remain peaceful and law-abiding. But I cannot promise that we will stand by and watch if coalition members engage in genocide, slavery, or other crimes against sentient beings." "So you're saying that humans will be the judges of what constitutes acceptable behavior?" "I'm saying that humans will not ignore atrocities simply because they're committed by our allies." The room was silent. Everyone understood what Morrison was saying. Humanity would not be a passive member of the coalition. They would use their power to enforce their own moral standards. In the end, the coalition voted to maintain its alliance with humanity, but with new restrictions. Human military forces would be used only in cases of external threats or major internal conflicts. Humanity would have a voice in coalition decisions, but not a controlling vote. The compromise satisfied no one completely, but it allowed the coalition to continue functioning. As the months passed, the new galactic order became established. The former Krethvar territories were divided between independent worlds and coalition protectorates. Human forces provided security for the most dangerous regions. Other species began to modify their military doctrines, trying to incorporate human tactics and strategies. But none of them could match human effectiveness in combat. The humans had advantages that went beyond technology. They had a different way of thinking about conflict. Admiral Zexthul met with Admiral Morrison one last time before the human fleet returned to Earth. They stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Vigilance, looking out at the stars. "Do you think this peace will last?" asked Thul. Morrison considered the question. "It will last as long as everyone remembers what happened to the Krethvar Empire. The moment someone thinks they can challenge the coalition and win, we'll have another war. And if that happens, then we'll end that war too, quickly and completely." Zexthul looked at his human friend. "The galaxy is afraid of you, you know." "I know, but fear can be a good thing if it prevents wars." "What if it causes them instead?" Morrison smiled sadly. "Then we'll deal with that too. It's what humans do. We adapt to whatever situation we find ourselves in." As the human fleet prepared to depart, a message was broadcast on all coalition frequencies. It was simple and direct. "The human military forces are returning to Earth. We hope they will never be needed again. But if they are, they will come, and they will win." The message was signed by every coalition leader, but everyone knew it was really a warning to potential enemies. The galaxy had learned that there were consequences for threatening the coalition dot in the years that followed. The phrase, "Don't let the human dreadnoughts join this fight," became common in military academies across the galaxy. It was both a warning and a hope. A warning to aggressors that humanity was watching. A hope that their intervention would never again be necessary. The humans had saved the coalition, but they had also changed it forever. The galaxy was a safer place, but it was also